Remember last week when I was all like,
"Oh, look at this Shin-Chan game. Nobody's gonna buy this. What even is this thing?"
Yeah, reminds me of that time a few years back when I asked if anyone knew what asterisk and obelisk was. Glad I could provide some entertainment for you, because that was definitely a joke, and I totally knew that Shin-Chan is a beloved series over 30 years running. I was just seeing if you were paying attention. Will I put my foot in my mouth again this week? Hey, there's only one way to find out. Greetings, citizens! I'm Jeff, and today we've got one of the best weeks for Nindies this year, with 17 new indie games to check out, all of which are heading to the Nintendo eShop through Sunday, August 21st. We always kick things off by looking at the games that snuck onto the eShop over the past week. However, despite 12 titles dropping out of nowhere, I didn't see a single one that wasn't complete shovelware garbage. So we're gonna skip the neglected Nindies this week because there's just so much good stuff to get into. So tell me down in the comments what you'd like to see on this week's Nindies at Night, click the like button, subscribe if you haven't, and let's get this show on the road. These are the 17 new release Nindies hitting the Nintendo Switch through Sunday, August 21st. The week kicks off on Tuesday the 16th and brings with it two titles that we've seen push their release dates numerous times. The first of which is 2 Point Campus. Now, it's actually published by Sega, so I technically shouldn't be covering it, but it is still made by an indie team, and I'm still really excited about this one. Why? Because when I was a young lad, I loved the theme park and theme hospital games by Bullfrog, and after endless acquisitions resulted in EA doing what they do best in closing down Bullfrog, 2 Point Studio was born from the ashes of the two Bullfrog studio heads. That said, this is essentially just a modern version of Theme Hospital, but on a college campus. Think of it as somewhere between The Sims and Roller Coaster Tycoon, where you're the omnipresent being building out your college, while also setting up its students in all kinds of hilarious situations, and just watching the antics play out. So far, the reviews are absolutely glowing, especially on the Switch. Some might find the game boring, but if so, then this probably just isn't the type of game for you. They've added all kinds of quality of life enhancements, so if you prefer building, you can build. And if you prefer to watch your creation thrive, you can just focus on that instead. If you like management sims, 2 Point Campus should be very high on your list. Just expect to pay the price for a game built by a small team and published by a massive organization, because 2 Point Campus keg stands its way onto the eShop for $39.99. And then, if you had a missing persons alert set up, never fear, because the fine folks at Castle Pixel have emerged from their slumber to deliver Blossom Tales 2: The Minotaur Prince for the low price of $13.49. It's published by Platonic Friends too, and after a few years of occasional back and forth with their people, I have not a bad thing to say about them. If you happen to like and want more of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, drop everything and pick this game up right now. Just do it. The top-down view and colorful pixel art is as charming as ever, and just like the original game, the story is told through the main character's grandpa, and it's always fun seeing him chime in as the narrator when you work your way through the huge open world. Now, if you happen to miss the original, it's a great game and definitely worth your time, but if you just want to dive into the sequel, I wouldn't worry about being lost. This game is all about the gameplay, and it delivers it in spades with about 15 hours of exploration, combat, and light puzzle solving as you travel between dungeons and bosses collecting new power-ups just like the last outing. Frankly, I'm shocked that this game is only $13, but that is a launch week discount, so if you think you're gonna pick it up, go grab it now before it's back up to $14.99. I guess they just wanted to get out ahead of the pack because that's all we've got for Tuesday, and Wednesday is pretty slim as well. That said, I'm really excited about this next one. Developed by a small team in Transylvania called Rakodu and published by Mill Games, a new Romanian publisher not at all related to Game Mill, we get both companies' first eShop endeavor with Robo Revenge Squad for $20 even. This is a charming, quirky, twin-stick shooter of sorts where you build and customize a robot using all sorts of silly household items, then send it down to the battlefield and just wreck shop. Everything about this game looks great if you're just looking to pass time on the couch, and I really want to see more of what it's all about. The levels do include some puzzles and various objectives, but for the most part, you cash in your currency, buy new parts, build the cartoony robot of your dreams, and just go to town. With this being the first effort from two relatively new teams, I'll be watching the reviews like a hawk. So maybe we'll get to see more of Robo Revenge Squad this Thursday on Nindies at Night. And the other release for Wednesday is also by a Nindie newcomer, this time being the first release by PlayShift Games. And I gotta say, they're doing something we really haven't seen before. For $15, Hellblasters is a mix of top-down bullet hell shoot-'em-up action and a visual novel. It centers around a group of mercenaries who are fighting a war and, well, I don't really care about that part, but the gameplay looks fun and the soundtrack is sick. There are 3 things I really like about Hellblasters, and they are: 1. The game features 2 primary modes, one where you play through 5 long levels in an arcade mode, and the other being 36 bite-sized stages that take you through the story as you progress. 2. The game features 5 difficulty modes, of which the easiest one is called Journalist. Nice work, team. And 3, that there's actually a third mode called Arrange, where you play through the main game, and the better you play, the more punishing the difficulty gets, and vice versa. There's a lot of good stuff going on here, and the arcade gameplay with 8/16-bit visuals are really selling the vibe. $15 is a bit much for me, but if you're a bullet hell fan, this might be worth adding to your collection. We've still got 13 games to get through on Thursday and Friday, but before we get to that, here are a few titles that you can likely skip. Regista just doesn't know when to quit, but with Japanese escape game The Fortress Prison, my best guess is that it should have been about 5 games ago. Baltoro Games reports Sweet Bakery Tycoon, calling this one the Extended Edition, just in case you want to hate yourself a little more. And if you wish you could spruce up your card games with scantily clad anime girls so out of proportion they actually become unattractive, East Asia Soft has you covered with their latest release that just happens to sound like a porno, Pretty Girls 4 Kings. Solitaire. But you wouldn't do that, no, not you. You're a person of taste, so you certainly need Benjamin Kistler's latest justification for abortion with home deco puzzles, because who doesn't want to see a whole, quote, game made out of the most boring part of The Sims? And you know that I'm usually very positive with the titles that come out of Seven Raven Studios, even as recently as with last week's release of Afterwave Downfall, but this week they dropped Dynabomb 2 for $15.99, and you know, it seems like it isn't that bad of a game, or at least it seems like a competent game, which is more than most of the releases in this segment can say, but I just can't. Do you see this? Do you see this first-gen iPad-looking game? I'm sorry, I just can't with this. Nindie no-no or not, any game that looks like this is going straight into the Alcatraz of Nindie Nation. Isla Choclier unfortunately returned with Project Night 2 Dusk of Souls, and if that sounds like an unfinished game with a search engine-friendly title, yep, you're on the right track. Oh, and Team 17...
Yes, I know, bear with me.
...published Thymesia, which looks like a neat Dark Souls-like game, but hey, it's a cloud-only version, and I will never suggest you buy a game that relies on a persistent high-speed internet connection when we've seen games like The Witcher 3 and Doom Eternal get perfectly fine native ports. Either make the game work or pass it up. Just don't pay good money for this cloud nonsense, especially when there's no guarantee it'll even work or be available for any extended period of time. Also, the latest find the something something on the screen piece of trash is Secrets of Magic 5 Back to School, and the jerks who just have to claim space on the eShop for it have the gall to charge $19.99. Now, I don't know what you gotta be on to make this game, think it's worth $20, and label it as the 5th entry when the only other game bearing its name is the 4th entry, but they're called Green Sauce Games, and I think it's about time to lay off the sauce. And finally, I can't believe I'm saying this, but after 155 episodes of covering their weekly releases, Ratalaika Games seems to have fallen to the dark side. Arenas of tanks? I mean, even if the gameplay looked fun, which I'm sure none of you believe to be the case, look at the performance in this video, and look at that interface! Ratalaika, don't do this, homie. Get some production out of your games. Don't publish stuff like this, please. I know it's not you, and this is from Petite Games, but hey, you put your name on it, and I really hope you don't do it again. I feel like I just learned that a longtime friend has been hiding a heroin addiction. Do we need like a Nindie intervention or something? Jumping into the big Thursday drop, we've got 13 games to cover, and I am positive that there's something here for everyone. We start with one of the coolest ideas I've seen for a game in a really long time. We Are OFK is an interactive biopic that follows the indie band OFK as they write, record, and release their first 5-song EP. It's a mix of an adventure game, visual novel, and various rhythm-based mini-games, with the bulk of the gameplay taking place through music videos that accompany each song. The developer and publisher, Team OFK, claims that there will be new weekly episodes after the game launches, and I'm interested to see how they pull that off. Visually, it's gorgeous, as you can see, and tonally it mixes lighthearted banter with somber emotional dialogue against the backdrop of the ups and downs that the indie band would experience, so it's a bit of everything. Above all else, I'm not entirely sure who this game is for, other than those familiar with the trials and tribulations of being an indie musician. Reviews will be interesting for sure, and I'm curious to hear what all of you think about this idea, so if you're into it, tell me down in the comments. Qbyte has a fun little idea this week, and as so many clever little indies do, Caminion comes from a Brazilian studio, this time from Burning Goat. A side-scrolling runner at its core, the game is all about timing jumps and collecting things while set to a cartoony neon synthwave aesthetic. Ringing the register at only $3.99, I'm hoping it turns out to be the fun little diversion that it currently looks like. Okay, next up we've got a charming title that's been long in the making, which will only appeal to a niche audience. But that niche audience is almost guaranteed to love it. RPG Time: The Legend of Right was featured in The Last Indie World and is pitched as a game being actively dreamed up and developed by a 10-year-old boy named Kenta. In reality, it's developed by a Japanese duo going by the name of Deskworks and has been in development for just shy of a decade. When it hit Xbox and PC a couple months back, the world got to see firsthand just how charming it can be to play through a game that is hand-drawn and narrated in real time by Kenta as they explore the undoubtedly creative world that takes place in his notebook. Regarding the niche audience, RPG Time is gonna be a hit for those of you who love the RPGs that, aren't really built for RPG fans. Earthbound, Paper Mario, Undertale are all clear inspirations here, and the gameplay is similarly not exactly traditional RPG fare, but rather a constantly evolving rotation of new ideas meant to keep you engaged with the latest mechanic introduced. Clocking in at about 15 hours, the reviews are mixed. However, there is an obvious theme here, where the people who enjoy the titles I just mentioned absolutely loved it, and the people who were more lukewarm on the idea probably shouldn't have been reviewing it in the first place. If you like what you see here, I think it's a very safe assumption to make that you're going to love this quirky, creative game. RPG Time: The Legend of Right is published by Aniplex and releases this Thursday for $29.99. If you're a big fan of creative ideas in gaming, but RPG Time isn't really your cup of tea, one of the most creative indie games to grace smartphones was Fireproof Games' The Room, which is still held as a shining example of how to do mobile gaming right. After seeing its port to Switch last year, the team is back to deliver The Room 2 for $9.99. With an eerie tone that is spooky but not necessarily scary, the game tells a story through notes that you find which seem to span time and space, with the bulk of the gameplay revolving around various puzzle boxes that will have you racking your brain until you feel like the smartest person alive when you reach the secret inside. With a runtime of 3 to 4 hours, it's not the longest experience, but it's one that you'll definitely remember. If you've been into games like The Witness, or just love solving incredibly creative puzzles woven together with a compelling story, don't miss this one. Oh, now, here's a palate cleanser. The pervy McPervertsons at Voltage have poked their heads out of their mom's basement to show the world their $30 interactive anime porn called Irresistible Mistakes. I might be way off here, but based on the description and provided content, it's about, how do I put this? Guys, I'm sorry. Trigger warning or whatever needs to go here, but this thing seems to be all about glorifying the concept of date raping a coworker. Way to go, team. And then CFK brings us an $8 adventure game that's all about gathering evidence to prove your spouse is cheating on you. Fun! I want to make fun of this, but honestly, between the premise and the bizarre yet unique art style, my divorce story actually seems kinda neat? If you're in the same boat as me, there's actually a demo available, so you can try pinning adultery on your spouse before diving into the whole kit and caboodle. A few months back, we saw NecoWorks release the first entry in their traditional JRPG, which was heavily inspired by Final Fantasy VII. This week, they follow up on their promise of building an episodic 90s-themed JRPG with Light Fairy Tale Episode 2 for $9.99. Continuing the story of saving a dying underground world from an evil empire, you're going to get the same chibi-style characters, anime cutscenes, and tried-and-true gameplay that will take you right back to the classic RPGs from the PlayStation 1. I've been pretty interested in this game and its episodic approach, but there's only one review available across all platforms on Metacritic, and it's not a good one. So, at least for now, I'll keep my eye on it. Let me know if you know anyone who's given it a shot. I'm really intrigued by these. And now for a big one, citizens. After being front and center in 2 Indie World presentations, and developer Chuhai Labs going on every outlet possible who'd let him talk about his passion project, Cursed to Golf finally releases for $19.99, and this is one to be excited for. What makes this game special? Well, for one, this half-golf, half-physics game has charm coming out its rear with a hilarious tone and wildly creative courses that don't resemble golf in the slightest. But the big draw for me is that Cursed to Golf includes procedurally generated courses, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! Really? Since you're dead and you make a deal with the devil, you play golf, and if you screw up, you die, only to be revived at the start of the course. And every time you die or run into a shop, you get the chance to purchase various upgrades that help you progress through the procedurally generated courses that certainly carry themes and gimmicks, but are otherwise shuffled around each time you play. What's more is that it's published by Thunderful, which is primarily made up by the team who previously developed the SteamWorld series, otherwise known as Image and Form. And this publisher is quickly becoming the go-to source for quirky games with fantastic quality. Anyone here picking up this cursed game of golf? Let me know down in the comments. And if you want to see it on Nindies at Night this week, I'll see what I can do. I'm probably butchering the name here, but I think the Japanese studio responsible for our next title is called Marudise, or Maru Dice. Apologies if that's way off. Anyways, this week they released their adventure game Treehouse Riddle to the Switch for $13.49. You play as a girl who wakes up in a treehouse, and the story unravels as she tries to find a way out by solving a bunch of puzzles that are much less focused on video gamey stuff, and more so on various, things that you'd find in real life. Like, you know when you see a shelf of various knick-knack toys that someone might keep on their desk? Or older games like Lights Out for you 90s kids? You know, stuff that would fall in the same category as a Rubik's Cube? That's the kind of puzzles that are in Treehouse Riddle, and they're all recreated in beautiful pixel art. Looks like there's also a bit more story than usual in these games, which could fall somewhere between a visual novel and what you'd see in a 16-bit RPG. It doesn't have any reviews yet, or really even any impressions, but I dig the game's vibe and its attempt to put a little spin on some of this genre's other conventions. And then, if a game about divorce wasn't enough for you this week, Pre-Run Creative, a Nindie newcomer based in the Czech Republic, releases an emotional whopper of a game with Hobo, Tough Life for $29.99. At first I was ready to poke fun at the game, but the more I researched it, the more I realized that since this game released on PC in April of last year, it has been very well received. You probably guessed by now, but it's a survival game where instead of playing out the post-apocalypse, or surviving in the woods, or clinging to life in a desolate, harsh climate, here you're just a dude who fell on hard times in modern society and is trying to keep himself alive. Visually, if you told me the game was built on a mod within Fallout 4, I'd probably believe you. Gameplay-wise, it's a survival game. You seek shelter, make friends, try to stay out of trouble, and just do what you can to get by for another day. There's also a deep system of NPCs and a morality system, so there's a story that'll keep you going, and ample opportunities to make choices that could see you benefiting from the kindness of strangers, or taking advantage of them. It's kind of a wild premise that I'm surprised hasn't been explored before, and it's pretty darn intriguing if you ask me. I am a bit concerned that it might not fit as well on Switch as it does on PC, but I'll definitely be keeping this one on my radar for a sale further down the line. I teased at the end of last week's episode that we're getting a port of a classic casual title that got its start back in the days of free-to-play Flash games, and we've now arrived at the latest release from Silesia Games. Kinda. Yo, you know about Zuma? I f***ing love Zuma! However, this isn't the beloved game that's been ported to every platform on the planet. Instead, this is a knockoff that's called Zumba. No, not that Zumba. This Zumba. And it's called Zumba Garden. I don't know what else to tell you about this match 3 type game, but I freaking love this game. And it releases for only $2.99. Will this be the filthy casual guilty pleasure that somehow keeps a slot near the front of my Switch's home row? Only time will tell. But I think there's a good chance it will. Also, BD Games brings us their take on the space shooter when they port their mobile and PC game Strikebuster Prototype for $6.99. And I gotta say, I am pretty intrigued. For the first time in a couple of months, I'm able to say twice in one episode that this game takes the space shooter system and throws in procedurally generated levels, roguelike mechanics, and RPG elements! So, we're off to a good start. In addition, it appears to play like a scrolling shoot-'em-up, but with free-range movement and a bit more of an arena or horde mode approach. It certainly has a bit of its own flair, too. Weapons are categorized into different groups, meaning you need to know which weapons to use against which enemies, and the experience system is tied to a combo mechanic, which should keep the action going. It looks like it was originally a free-to-play mobile game just based on how it's structured, but in this case, and for $7, as long as it was restructured to progress more like a traditional game, I just might be picking this one up. And last up for the week is a game I had never heard about, but am so into every bit of its vibe. The latest title, published by Merge Games, one of the best indie publishers, is brought to us by a studio called Affordable Acquisition, which is just the best name, isn't it? Anyways, Slaycation Paradise is a traditional idea with a downright redonkulous execution. Built as a twin-stick shooter, it's a tower defense game where you build up your base and ward off hordes of enemies in a tropical vacation resort. From there, though, the team really puts a capital M in its mature rating, and does so in the most unapologetic way. Of course, there's copious amounts of gore and such, but it also looks like most of the zombie monster creature things are naked? I do see pixelated censoring in the trailer, but that might just be for the trailer. Either way, it's still funny. And then there's also a big emphasis on the outlandish weapons you can use, kinda reminding me of the Ratchet & Clank series, as you get weapons that can turn enemies into cats, summon UFOs, or... well, one of the weapons is... it's a horse dong. Yep. So there's that. Overall, the humor very much looks like what you'd expect from the Saints Row games, and for $20, it looks really fun too. Protecting your tropical vacation bunker from a wave of nudist zombies by using your trusty 2-foot horse stick? Psh, sign me up. I will definitely be requesting a code for this game without hesitation, so maybe we'll get a chance to spend some more time with it on Nindies at Night. In fact, Nindies at Night is shaping up to be a pretty fun time this week. I'd like to check out Slaycation Paradise and Robo Revenge Squad because those both look like good games to stream. Of course, we've also got the heavy hitters with games like 2 Point Campus, Blossom Tales 2, We Are OFK, RPG Time, Curse to Golf, and then, if you feel like taking a chance, we've got titles like Hellblasters, Kaminion, Hobo, The Room 2, and so many more are all combining to build what I would say is easily the most exciting lineup of the summer. So what do you think? Sound off down in the comments with what you're looking forward to, as well as which of those games you'd like to see on stream this week. You can also follow Nindie Nation on Twitter, and we would love to have you join the Nindie discussion over in our little corner of Discord. You can find us right back here on YouTube this Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern if you want to see what Nindies at Night is all about, and if you need a little more motivation, I plan on giving out a few games during the 2-hour stream, so we hope to see you there. Next week is looking a little lighter, but given the lineup we just went through, I think we'll all have plenty to keep us busy. Even with Dusk Diver 2, a clever new tower defense game, and the latest Atari revival vying for a home on your Switch. But that's all for next week, citizens, and we're all done for today. Thanks so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and sharing Nindie Nation with others. Until next time, I'm Jeff. This has been Nindie Nation episode 156. And remember, no matter what type of game you're looking for, Nindie Nation will be right here to help you find just the thing to keep your Joy-Cons synced.